The announcement of the 2026 FIFA World Cup being hosted across North America was framed as a celebration of sport, yet in reality, it was also a projection of power, a carefully staged demonstration of how nations use cultural events to consolidate influence. At the White House, the presence of the FIFA president was not simply a sporting courtesy. It was a signal that the United States is once again positioning itself as the central stage for global attention, not only through diplomacy and military alliances, but through cultural spectacle that reinforces the legitimacy of leadership. When a nation hosts the World Cup, it is not just opening its stadiums to fans, it is opening its identity to the world. The Kennedy Center in Washington was chosen as the site for the tournament draw. At first glance, this seems like an aesthetic decision, but geopolitically, it functions as a message. The Kennedy Center represents culture, heritage, and a sense of permanence. By tying the largest sporting event in history to the heart of the capital, the administration was not only celebrating football, it was broadcasting a narrative that America remains stable, safe, and confident enough to be the hub through which the world convenes. The claim that Washington has been transformed from one of the most unsafe cities in the country to one of the safest places on earth was central to this message. Safety in the capital is not only a municipal issue, it is a matter of national prestige. If the capital of the United States appears lawless, unstable, or disordered, the perception of the entire nation is weakened. The restoration of law and order, therefore, becomes a geopolitical asset. It allows the state to host not only its own government functions, but also the converging flows of millions of foreign visitors and billions of viewers without fear of humiliation. In this sense, law enforcement becomes part of foreign policy. The deployment of the National Guard, the crackdown on violent crime, and the assertion that crime has dropped by unprecedented percentages are framed not only as domestic achievements, but as prerequisites for America's ability to project influence globally. A safe Washington means a credible Washington, and a credible Washington means a host nation capable of symbolizing leadership in an era of contested legitimacy. The numbers attached to the World Cup are not trivial. 6 million fans expected in stadiums, 6 billion global viewers across television and streaming platforms, $30 billion in projected economic impact, 185,000 jobs created. Each figure is presented not only as economic data, but as evidence of organizational capacity. No other nation could host 104 matches across 16 cities while simultaneously ensuring border security, public safety, and international visibility. Each ticket sold, each flight booked, each hotel room filled becomes an extension of American influence. This is why the event was linked explicitly to broader economic themes. Claims of $4 trillion in tariff revenue, a 1,000-point rise in the stock market, and record-breaking economic indicators were tied rhetorically to the World Cup. The argument was that just as tariffs had strengthened America in trade, the World Cup would strengthen America in soft power. Just as stock markets reflected confidence in national leadership, global fans traveling to American cities would reflect confidence in American stability. Sport, economics, and governance were merged into a single narrative of resurgence. The issue of immigration was woven into the same frame. The assurance that fans would obtain visas easily but still undergo thorough vetting demonstrates the balance between openness and sovereignty. The United States will welcome the world, but it will not compromise control. The flow of millions across borders for the sake of sport becomes a metaphor for the broader challenge of globalization. A strong nation is one that can regulate entry, maintain order, and still present itself as welcoming. Thus, the World Cup is not portrayed as a vulnerability, but as a test America is prepared to pass. This reflects the larger truth that global sporting events are arenas of geopolitics. Just as the Olympics have long served as stages for ideological competition, the World Cup serves as a platform for states to assert legitimacy. The Soviet Union once used the Games to show socialist strength. China used the Beijing Olympics to symbolize its rise. Qatar used the 2022 World Cup to demand recognition despite criticism. Now the United States will use 2026 to remind the world of its centrality. Each game is more than a match. Each broadcast is more than entertainment. Each detail, from the safety of streets to the quality of infrastructure, becomes a data point in the argument about which nation deserves to lead. The announcement also hinted at the geopolitical environment into which this World Cup will emerge. References to Russia, Ukraine, tariffs, trade with Canada and Mexico, and even the European Union reveal that the tournament is not occurring in a vacuum. It will be staged against the backdrop of ongoing wars, contested alliances, and economic struggles. For Russia, still engaged in a grinding conflict in Eastern Europe, the image of the United States hosting the world peacefully will be an implicit contrast. For China, seeking to present itself as an alternative pole of power, the spectacle of billions tuning into matches across American cities will reinforce the challenge of competing with American cultural reach. For allies in Europe, the event will be a reminder of the depth of the transatlantic relationship, in which American infrastructure, media, and organizational capacity still set the global standard. In this way, the World Cup becomes not only a sporting event, but a tool of strategic communication. It tells allies that America remains reliable. It tells rivals that America remains unshaken. And it tells domestic audiences that leadership is capable of turning culture into power. The staging at the Kennedy Center adds another layer. The restoration of the venue, the investment in its appearance, and the symbolic connection to the nation's capital create an image of renewal. Just as the city itself is described as reborn from lawlessness into order, so the Kennedy Center is described as restored from neglect into beauty. The implication is that America itself, once depicted as declining, is being restored to greatness. Hosting the world at such a stage makes that message visible. The rhetoric also included comparisons between World Cup matches and the Super Bowl. Each game, it was said, is essentially a Super Bowl, sometimes even bigger. This is more than hyperbole. It highlights the logistical and economic magnitude of the event. To host 100 Super Bowls in a single month is to prove that the nation can handle complexity at a scale no other can match. This comparison reframes the World Cup not as foreign or unfamiliar, but as an extension of America's own sporting culture, integrated into the national narrative of spectacle and scale. Beyond the economics and logistics, the announcement emphasized symbolism. The trophy, presented in the Oval Office, was described as something only winners can touch. By associating it with the presidency, the message was that America itself remains among the winners. This was not merely a gesture of sportsmanship. It was a calculated alignment of national identity with global victory. The linkage between domestic security and international hosting was further underlined through references to crime reduction in Washington and promises of safety for visiting fans. These claims were reinforced with anecdotes about restaurant business, nightlife, and public confidence. The subtext was clear. A nation that cannot secure its streets cannot host the world. By claiming that Washington had achieved unprecedented reductions in crime, the administration was sending a signal that America can once again provide security at a level suitable for global gatherings. Even references to other cities, such as Los Angeles and Chicago, were folded into this narrative. The implication was that federal intervention could stabilize urban centers, ensuring that sites chosen for matches would be safe, orderly, and presentable. Thus, the World Cup became not only a cultural project, but a justification for broader policies of security and urban renewal. And yet the announcement also extended into global geopolitics. Questions about Russia's strikes in Ukraine, the possibility of new sanctions or tariffs, and ongoing conflicts were interwoven with the World Cup narrative. This was deliberate. It positioned the tournament not as an isolated sporting occasion, but as an event occurring within the context of global instability. By hosting it, the United States would demonstrate that, even in a time of war, it remains capable of summoning the world for peaceful competition. This contrast enhances soft power. It allows America to embody stability while rivals embody conflict. The discussion of tariffs and trade agreements reinforced this dual role. The claim that tariffs had generated trillions in revenue and that stock markets were surging was juxtaposed with the promise of billions in World Cup impact. The message was that America wins on all fronts: in trade wars, in cultural influence, and in global prestige. Every domain, from economics to sport, was part of the same continuum of national strength. At a deeper level, the World Cup also ties into narratives of sovereignty and border control. The assurance that visas would be granted efficiently but securely reflects the broader ideological stance that America must welcome the world without losing control of its frontiers. In this framing, the World Cup becomes a metaphor for global order itself, open enough to invite all nations, but structured enough to maintain discipline. It reflects the belief that globalization can be managed, but only through strength. This narrative also intersects with historical memory. The United States has previously used cultural events to project soft power, from the Olympics in Los Angeles to the centennial celebrations of independence. The 2026 World Cup aligns with the 250th anniversary of the nation's founding. This coincidence is not incidental. It allows the event to be framed as not only a sporting spectacle, but a commemoration of American endurance. Hosting the world while celebrating 2.5 centuries of survival and growth is itself a message of resilience. The broader geopolitical implication is that while rival powers may boast of rapid rises or new claims to influence, the United States remains the only nation that has consistently combined military dominance, economic strength, cultural appeal, and organizational capacity. The World Cup becomes proof of this continuity. It is not simply that the United States can host, it is that the United States is still the natural center of gravity for global events. The narrative even incorporated reflections on foreign leaders, from Canada's Prime Minister to the President of Russia. References to Vladimir Putin, to tariffs with Canada and Mexico, to deals with the European Union, all underscored that even in a ceremony about football, geopolitics is never absent. Sport is another theater in which influence is contested, and the presence or absence of rival leaders at such events becomes itself a statement. Thus, when the FIFA president spoke of uniting the world, the phrase carried more weight than usual. In practice, the World Cup will not erase divisions, but it will highlight which nations are capable of managing them, and in 2026 it will be the United States that demonstrates its ability to convene the globe.